I might even seem a bit like a heretic in saying that this first book was one that didn't work out for us because it is so beloved, because it is so iconic, and I feel really bad for saying this, and you might even want to unsubscribe. I hope not, so hear me out. Hi, I'm Rachel from 7 and All, and today I'm coming to you to share about some of my favorite and least favorite read-alouds from about the last year of homeschool. This video is in collaboration with Katie from Life in the Mundane, so I will be linking her channel below along with the playlist of all the channels that are participating in chatting about books, favorite books and least favorite books that we've used as read-alouds. Thank you so much for watching. All these books that I'm going to talk about, I will be linking in the description below. So if they're books that I like and you think you'll like them too, you can definitely check them out. They're in the description below. Maybe I'll also link the books that didn't work for us, just in case they'll work for you. So I'm going to start with the good news because I think everyone likes to hear the good news first. So I'll start with my favorite recent read-alouds that we've done. And this one is Cheaper by the Dozen by Frank B. Gilbreth Jr. and Ernestine Gilbreth Carey. This book is a story, it's a true family story written by some of the kids in this story. There's a movie about Cheaper by the Dozen, a relatively recent one, which has nothing to do with the book, and there's also an older movie which is a lot closer to the book. But this book follows the story of a family that has 12 children, and they are being raised by an engineer, by a efficiency expert. So he basically treats his 12 children as a whole experiment in efficiency. And it is very hilarious. It's actually also very reminiscent of my own family in some strange ways. I'm one of 7 children who were raised by 2 engineers, so that has a lot of familiarity to me. The story takes place around like 1900 to 1920 type of time frame, so it is a historical story, so we bring in glimpses of kind of American life in that period of history. So there were a lot of different historical references to talk about, and early cars, especially culture, movie, motion pictures. But this was a read that I have loved this book for years and years, and the kids loved it when I introduced them to it. There's also a sequel called Bells on Their Toes. I will warn you though, I can't get through this book without crying. Even though I know what's going to happen, the last chapter has me in tears, the kids are handing me tissues, but this is an excellent book. The next one is a little series. This is not serious at all, and I should tell you, in our homeschool, usually read-alouds are not for us like the most serious part of our homeschool. We use this as more fun, yes, exposure to literature, but we don't try to do our heaviest learning in our read-aloud time. It's just kind of about fun, developing a love for books, building a shared kind of cultural memory, as it were, of the books that we love in our family. So I shared the Wayside School series with the kids recently. We read through all 3 of these. These are very silly and hilarious. I read these when I was a kid. I can still remember some of the stories. They have some kind of ongoing jokes that go through the whole series, like there's dead rats that live in the basement of this school. There's a missing 19th story. They've got some crazy teachers in here. It's all about following a certain classroom full of kids at a school. These are hilarious. The kids absolutely love them. Couldn't wait for the next chapter. Were always asking me to read another one. So these are a lot of fun. And Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle, going on the same theme of I don't take read-aloud time too seriously. This is an excellent book, very amusing for kids, but also I think there definitely is a heart behind it, and you can use it to spark conversations about behavior, motivations behind behavior. Basically, the whole concept of Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle is that she is kind of a child's behavior specialist. And when parents are having problems with their kids that they have no idea how to solve, Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle finds a way to come in, and all the children love her. She has a big heart for kids, and she's got some really outside the box ways of solving disciplinary issues and behavioral issues. This is an older book. I think it was written in the 40s, but it is really cool to read, and it does definitely spark discussions with the kids about their own behavior. And, yep, I'm consistent. We like to read poetry during our read aloud time as well, and this is the book that we've been working through. Poetry, in Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein. This is my copy from when I was a kid, and it's in not very good shape. But they love the poems and the illustrations. This is not a very serious introduction to poetry. We do have some more serious poetry books as well, but this has been a really fun one to share with them, something from my childhood that I loved and that they are now falling in love with. And right now, actually, this is our current read aloud, is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I decided to read through the series of Narnia. We started with The Magician's Nephew, and now we're in the second book. So experiencing Narnia with them for the first time has been really fun, and I'm excited to reread all the books myself. Of course, this one I feel like is the one I know the story of the best, so it's not necessarily the most exciting one for me right now. But we're at least about halfway done with this, and we'll be moving on to book 3 in the series soon. So we've had a lot of fun with these read-alouds this past year, but let me share with you some read-alouds that were a total flop. And I might even seem a bit like a heretic in saying that this first book was one that didn't work out for us, because it is so beloved, because it is so iconic, and I feel really bad for saying this, and you might even want to unsubscribe. I hope not, so hear me out. But The Little House in the Big Woods, we attempted to read about a year ago, and it did not work at all. Now, I know this series well. I grew up reading it. We have all the books. I visited Dismet, South Dakota in real life. I have enjoyed this series. I think it's a classic. Wanted to be able to share it with the kids, but we were in a period that we were like practically having to read one sentence at a time and stop and explain what did that sentence mean. And we realized that the problem was for our kids, this book was just too far from anything that they had experienced, too far away from anything that they could understand, that it just was not a fit for right now. Now, we don't live in America. My youngest siblings, who I'm teaching right now, and these read-alouds have kind of been from our 1st to 2nd grade year. They weren't born in America. They've never been there. So they don't have almost any kind of general cultural experience with the pioneers of the West, or even winter, and some of the basic seasonal things that take place in this book. And those are really great topics for them to learn about. And kind of one of the big points of read-alouds is to start exposing children to things that they don't have any real-life experience with. But we found that with this book, it was just too big of a gap for them at their current age and with their current what they have grown up with to this point in their life, that it was too hard, that it was not enjoyable at this stage. We might come back to this in a couple years when we've had more time to start building those hooks, building those connections between different topics, continents, periods in history, seasons, and I think it'll work then, but it did not work for us at all right now. So this was a did not finish. And this was a similar one for us, Henry Huggins. It wasn't as difficult of a slog through it as Little House in the Big Woods, but it had that similar thing of the girls just can't quite imagine the world of Henry Huggins. I can, for some reason, either from the books I've read, from the little bits of suburban American life and the kind of culture of this time period when this book took place. Like, I can imagine it very well, but they couldn't. It's just too far, and at their age, it was too hard to be trying to explain what every different thing was inside the book. So this was also one that we didn't manage to completely finish. So those are both not the book's fault necessarily, but the type of book for our current situation, our current age. So that's kind of my piece of advice right there, is consider your children, what they know, what they're able to understand, what they're excited about when you're first starting out in a homeschooling or in a read-aloud journey. That's really important. And I'd like to come back to those books in the future, but I shouldn't just necessarily think, oh, an average 7-year-old would enjoy these books, so the 7-year-old in my homeschool should, because they're not all the same. So you got to choose books that work for you and for your family, and that's my encouragement right now. And my third flop is Greek myths. This is just the Usborne miniature edition. There's nothing against this edition specifically, but this is the one that was part of our curriculum. And I think I've just come to realize over the years, my family just does not enjoy Greek myths. It comes up, as part of a well-rounded education most of the time, and I don't mind mythology or learning about different religions or cultures, and this is a really important piece of history and culture, but it's not our favorite. I even took actually a class in college on classical mythology, on Greek mythology, and that was also one of my least favorite classes of all time, and I love school. So, sometimes you just got to know what you don't love, and it's okay to learn about what you don't love. I actually think that that's important for kids to stretch and to learn about things that they're not all that interested in, and for adults too, for that matter. But sometimes it's also good to say, yeah, this is not so much for me. I'll learn about it a bit, but maybe I'm not going to devote so much time to studying it and making sure that I have a really good grasp of all of this. It's not necessarily my passion and my interest, and you don't have to be passionate and interested in everything, although some people are. Interested in Greek myths, that's totally fine. So I would love to hear from you. What have been some of your big hits as read-alouds lately, and what have been some of your flops? I'd like to hear what motivates how you choose read-alouds. I think this changes a lot in different stages of homeschool, versus when you're beginning with kids who are just learning to love learning and you want to build curiosity about books, versus later on when they're already maybe book devourers and you just need to keep throwing more books at them because you can hardly keep up with the demand, and you want to expand their horizons and get them to try different kinds of literature that's outside their comfort zone. So depending on what stage you're in, you're definitely going to be making different choices about your books. This is what ours have been, and I hope you do like this video, and I would love for you to subscribe to our channel and join our family, watch our homeschooling journey of homeschooling abroad as a multi-generational homeschooling family. Thanks so much for watching. See you later. Bye.